Okay, so good morning to all 11 STEM students for our discussion about the other geological hazard. So last time nakapag-discuss na po tayo about the main geologic hazard which is the earthquake. No? So earthquake hazard is very dangerous. It's very kind of unpredictable to think what is happened before, during, and after a ground shaking or ibig sabihin po ay tinatawag po natin earthquake. But for now, we are going to focus ourselves to think what is more about on other geological hazard. So meron tayong iisipin na um, land movement, the landslide, the mudslide, or even sinkhole na pwede po natin ma-category dito sa other geological hazard. So, for first part po ng ating discussion, we are to think what is the meaning of landslide. And sabi po that landslide is causes permanent deformation as a result of the downward and outward movements of large volume of soil or even rock downslope under the influence of the force of gravity. It is a frequent natural hazard and a major threat to human or even environment. So, makikita po natin doon sa unang po nating slide or doon sa presentation po natin is a kind of assessment, is a kind of risk assessment. Di ba po last time nakapag-discuss na po tayo what the policy option given by the NDRRMC on different municipality na ibibigay doon sa mismong location or area kung ito ba'y acceptable or unacceptable fees, no? So, maaaring makita po natin na yung keyword po natin ay vulnerability, the hazard map, and the risk management. Okay? So, other fact pa na bigay po ng UNISDR or the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. The term landslide refers to a variety of processes that result in the downward and outward movement of slope-forming materials, including rock, soil, artificial field, or a combination of these. So makikita po natin on the illustration, on the uh, figure, meron po tayong iba-ibang mga type of landslide. No? Meron po tayong makita po dyan na yung una sa letter A up to letter J, we have rotational landslide, the translational landslide, the block slide, the rock fall, topple, debris flow, debris avalanche, earth flow, the creep or the creep, and the lateral spread. So this kind of type of different landslide movement ay nakadepende pa rin doon sa mismong foundation ng location of area. Maaaring figure na nila noong every month umuulan, maaaring every month pinuputulan ng mga puno, no, sa mga bundok, mga bulubunduking area. So nakadepende rin sa location, no. Depende rin sa season o sa atmosphere appearance doon sa pinaka-location ng area. So meron po ditong nakalagay na datos that in many parts of the world, landslide are frequent natural hazard and a major threat to humans or even environment. According to the International Disaster Database of the Center for Research and the Epidemiology of Disaster, since 1900s, some 130,000 persons have lost their lives because of landslide and flash flood. And economic losses amounted to over 50 billion US dollar. In the period from 2000 to 2014, the corresponding figures were around 26,000 beds and 40 billion US dollar in losses. And the actual figure are however much higher. So makikita po natin nakadepende pa rin po sa percentage ng bawat area, no? So kasama po dito yung Philippines, no? Kaya po it's kind of worldwide po yung nakikita ko pong landslide risk assessment po na nakita po natin. So nakita po dito, no, we have a casualty of 87,000, but we have 69,000 confirmed killed and 18,000 missing, caused by the Sikwan or Wekwan earthquake on May 12, 2008, were the result of the landslide triggered by the event. Recent catastrophic landslide in Afghanistan, US, and the Philippines, and India, as well as illustrate that landslide are still a major threat in developed as well as developing countries. So yun po yung nakita po natin sa pangyayari po about landslide. No? Sabi nga po dito, we have type of physics of landslide. No? Meron daw pong type of bahid daw po ng konti ang landslide about physics. No? Sabihin ko nga po dito, physics of landslide. When you hear a physics of landslide, ito po yung makikita po natin that either landslide occur naturally. Landslide can be triggered or exacerbated by water and vibration. Bakit po nang sabing water? Nakadepende yung water from the precipitation during storm, hurricanes, or typhoon. Pag sinabi naman pong vibration, syempre po, ito na yung tinatawag po natin ground shaking or tinatawag po natin earthquake. So, yun po yung nilaman po about physics of landslide. Meron din po tayong tinatawag pong phenomena either reduce the friction or increase the force down the slope. Meron po tayong tatlong bagay po dito. Banggitin ko po, no? I-take down notes nyo po ito. Downslope, una po, downslope movement of soil or rock can form an earthquake lake. Pangalawa, downslope flow or wet soil mud flow can bury an village or miners. And number 3 po, pangatlo, downslope or lateral spreading of soil or rock can damage infrastructure. So mapapansin po natin doon na iba-ibang pagkakataon yung pwedeng mangyari po pagdating po kay landslide. Okay po? Meron din daw pong tinatawag, pag daw po landslide, it can increase disaster risk. Its contributors to risk. Ito po, nabanggit nga po natin that the 4 elements of risk, we have location, exposure, vulnerability, and then tinatawag po natin hazard. Okay? So, meron din po tayong tinatawag kung different case history of landslide at it can give a cause of damage. Ano po iyon? Una, building on unstable slope. Pangalawa, soil and rock susceptible to fall. Pangatlo, soil and rock susceptible to topples. Pang-apat, soil and rock susceptible to spread. Pang-lima, soil and rock susceptible to flow. Pang-anim, it can the landslide or pwedeng cause of damage ng landslide, yung pang-anim natin ay yung precipitation that triggers slope failure shaking, and yung pang-pito, ground shaking that triggers slope failure. So, from the process, from the case history, na alam mo na po palang merong nangyari diyang landslide or physics of landslide, maaaring magkaroon tayo ng planning o magkaroon tayo ng idea how to prevent or how to manage ourselves when the landslides strike. No? So, meron din po tayong tinatawag kung unacceptable risk sa loob ni landslide. Ano po yung unacceptable risk pag nasa loob ni landslide? It can either building on slope, slope failure damage, economic loss, death, or even injury, and loss of function. So, maaaring nakadepende pa rin po doon sa pangyayari pag tinawag po natin unacceptable risk si landslide. Po? So, mapapansin rin po natin doon sa ibang illustration po pagdating kay landslide. Ito po ay other geological hazard lang naman po. No? Target po natin si landslide, at si sinkhole. Kasi po, yun ang kadalasan po nangyayari po sa Pilipinas. Okay? So, share lang po kayo ng other screen para po sa next po natin. We have, wait lang po yung tinatawag po natin landslide, devastating landslide in the Philippines induced by the heavy rain. Devastating landslide in the Philippines induced by the heavy rain. So mapapansin po natin, no, na meron po tayong mga pangyayari po. No, pwede po natin itong i-capture ng picture or screenshot niyo po ito para ma-review niyo po yung mga date po na lalabas po sa screen. So devastating landslide in the Philippines. Ito pong figure na to noong April 22, 2011. Ito po yung mga pangyayaring devastating landslide in the Philippines. So yan po lahat yun. Mapapansin po natin na iba po talaga pag si landslide din po. Minsan po kasi ang cause po ay si storm, si water, tapos si ground shaking, si landslide, si earthquake, sa vibration na tinatawag natin sa physics of landslide. Search and rescue, ito po yung kadalasan pong ginagawa ng mga munisipyo o municipality na NDRRMC. So emerging technologies for coping with landslides. So we have forecast of slope failure, monitoring technologies, example of remote sensing or sensors in the local slides, warning system, history of each landslide, computer model of a landslide, maps for zoning and disaster scenarios, hazard and risk assessment models. And the risk reduction strategies for landslide, ito po yung ginagawa, the purpose, the prevention, the identification of specific risks, identification of landslide potential after storms and earthquakes, techniques, retaining walls, local scale, use of site-specific data for remediation, and use for remote sensing for warning. So ito po yung ilang bagay po about devastating landslide here in the Philippines. So ito po yung dapat po natin alam pag nakarinig po tayo ng landslide. Next naman po natin, bago tayo mag-shift into sinkhole, meron po tayo papanoorin pong video clip. Ito po iyon. i-play ko lang po ulit yung sorry po 'no, i-play ko lang po ulit yung, video clip po. Within 2 minutes lang naman po ito, pasensya na po, play ko lang po, baka po kasi walang signal.
Nakatayo sa landslide-prone area ang Philippine Science High School sa Baguio. May ilang bahay din na sinkhole pala ang nasa ilalim. Ibandila mo, Ada Sibayan.
Malapit na ang tag-ulan, kaya todo babala ang Mines and Geosciences Bureau sa posibleng pagguho ng lupa. Sa hazard map ng MGB Cordillera, nasa hilaga at kanlurang bahagi ng Baguio City ang mga sinkhole. 14 na barangay ang nakitaan ng 157 sinkhole. Sa listahan ng City Planning Office, may 24 na bahay na nakatayo sa mismong sinkhole. Tinabunan lang nila ito ng lupa, pero hindi raw natatakot ang mga residente.
Hindi kami natatakot kasi kung lumulubog, yan lang.
Sa buong Baguio City, maraming mga sinkhole na hindi nakikita ng mga residente pero dun pala nakatayo yung kanilang mga bahay. Nadiskubre rin sa bagong survey ng MGB Cordillera na may mga hidden sinkhole pa doon din sa 14 na barangay.
Paggamit ang bagong equipment, yung mga ibang areas na akala natin solid sa ibabaw, baka may possibility na sa ilalim. Malalaman natin kung may extension ng sinkhole o kaya doon dumadaan yung underground river.
Delikado ito kapag umulan at lumindol.
Pag hindi na makayanan ng surface yung ground shaking, pwede siyang bumigay.
It will be presented to those, to the owners of these structures. So they should be aware that they are on top of this danger also.
Landslide-prone area rin ang kinatatayuan ng 4 na palapag na gusali ng Philippine Science High School at dormitoryo nito sa Irisan, Baguio City.
Pag maraming bitak-bitak kasi ang mga bato, ang tendency doon, pag umulan ng matagal, mas madaling mag-slide yung mga rocks.
Tumangging magkomento sa harap ng kamera pero iginiit ng campus director na si Dr. Conrado Rotor na uumpisahan na ang construction ng slope protection ngayong linggo. Ada Sibayan, ABS-CBN News, Baguio.
So, magpo-proceed na po tayo for discussion about sinkhole. It's a shifting part from landslide to sinkhole po. So, share ko po yung screen. Huwag niyo pong kalimutang mag-notes po, no? Kahit po ito ay recorded. Baka po may time po na pwede po doon sa video clip, may mga in-illustrate po doon. Pwede po akong doon kumuha po ng quiz po natin or recitation for next meeting po natin. So, make sure po na tayo po ay nakikinig at nakakapag-take down notes po. So, sinkhole, ito po, no? Ito po yung bagay po na mapapansin po natin. Saan bang parte, saan bang merong lugar ang sinkhole na pwede po natin ma-identify. A sinkhole is a depression in the ground that has no natural external surface drainage. So water drains to the subsurface, maaaring nakadepende po iyon sa location. Ano po mga cause of sinkhole? Pwedeng human involvement. Alam naman po natin na itong bagay na to ay pwede palang ma-involve ang human. Maaaring yung kakagawa ng mga, di ba, nakaraan, kung napapansin niyo po, may mga Bulacan bulk water, no? Kada wala pang 1 kilometro, may ginagawa na namang tubo, no? Para sa daluyan ng tubig. So, hukay na naman yun, no? So, maaaring yun pala isang bagay din na makapag-trigger, na makapag-result na tinatawag natin sinkhole. The underneath soil rock is dissolved by the groundwater flowing through the materials. Factors in sinkhole. So, ito po yung process that higher chance in urban. So, nakadepende sa pressure na maaaring makapag-provide ang aquifer system po natin. Karst terrain po, we have landscape formed from the dissolution from soluble rocks like limestone and gypsum and characterized by the sinkholes, caves, or even underground drainage system. So, ito po yung types of sinkhole po na pwede po natin malaman. Dissolution sinkhole, the ground with little overburden, water erodes the rock away. Deep impression in the ground forming a basin. So mapapansin po natin on the second types of sinkhole, ito po ay tinatawag po natin cover collapse sinkhole. Ito po, kung mapapansin niyo po, no, doon sa apat na illustration, the sediments fill or spill into a cavity. Makita niyo po yung overburden na mostly clay. No? Doon sa baba niya is yung tinatawag nating carbonate bedrock. On the process itself, on the overburden soil loses stability, mapapansin niyo po medyo naglulus siya. The rapid and sudden collapse. Kaya po nagkakaroon ng tinatawag nating dramatic sinkhole. Okay po. So, types of sinkhole pa rin po, sabi ko nga po, it's the human involvement, no? So, depende na po sa mga pangyayari po iyan like construction, pumping of groundwater, uh, these are major information, a kind of human involvement about sinkhole. Yung most affected or most affected areas po, ito po ay sa US data. Pero po kung mapapansin po natin, kung Philippine setting po tayo, mapapansin po natin more in sa north place or north location po. Sa mga bulubundukin po mapapansin po natin na ito po ay makapag-result ng sinkhole. So, some pictures or some figure lang po ito about the famous sinkhole lang po. We have the Guatemala City sinkholes in Guatemala. And then yung tinatawag pong Devil's Sinkhole in Texas, USA is about 40 feet and by 60 feet opening wide and 400 feet down. So yan po yung mga bagay po na pwede po natin malaman about sinkhole. So yun po yung discussion po natin about this kind of um, other geological hazards discussion. Make it sure po na tayo po lahat ay nakapag panood nitong video na to para po sa ating unang lesson po about finals second semester. And then pwede din po tayo mag-rely po dito sa mga sa ating mga sasagutan about the Q4 SIM number 1. No? Yung Q4 SIM number 1 nyo po, don't forget na ito po ay palaging sinasubmit po sa clips alas 5 ng hapon tuwing Biyernes. Okay po. So, God bless you all. Maraming salamat po. Nawa po tayo ay marami pong natutunan ngayong araw. God bless po at palagi